these aliens are going to have to be, many, many billions of years old. They're going to have to be staggeringly advanced to make all of this work.
Mm-hmm.
Just sort of mind-boggling to wrap your head around, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume, again, I can't say, how, but once we start dealing with the ability to travel through the universe, I mean, our assumption would be that this is something like wormhole travel, or alkyl drives, either bending space-time, warping it around a craft, or, doing these kind of, exotic mechanisms to travel. So knowing that these are so far off for us, they're so hypothetical. But yeah, I think you have to be dealing with a civilization that is at least tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years ahead to be at this level.
That raises something I hadn't thought of, which is that, these creatures, because I was thinking, so what, they're just seeding the planet and then they're just waiting for 4 billion years, but like you said, they would have, time being relative and all, they would have access to ways to speed up their perception of the process. You can
go into this in a way that's very mind-bending, that, for example, if you have these technologies, essentially you're dealing with time travel as well as space travel. So, and people sort of wonder that. They say, why would you want to do that? But let's say you can see the planet and then you are able to bend space-time and, you go back to wherever you're from. But possibly you can target points in the timeline where you come back and you do certain things and leave again. Now, it's conceivable that the same beings that, the very same beings that do the seeding could come back later, 1 billion years later, and they're still alive because the time for them is not the same for us, right? And this is a kind of, I know it's a mind bender for people, but, it could literally be the same guy or whatever, the same person. I don't know. I mean, who knows what they look like.
Some grad student robot, just doing a product.
Yeah, but it could be that same individual organism or entity or robot or whatever, could come back and it'd be that very same one. And that's a kind of mind bender because, for us, obviously, billions of years have gone past. But for that individual, that wouldn't necessarily be the case at all if they're using wormhole travel, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I think that's when we clash with these ideas of highly advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. We have to bend our mind in a way to realize that is not like us. And too often we hear people say, well, why would they want to do that? Or we wouldn't do that. Or, it's like, hang on, with alien minds, right? And that aliens that perhaps have technologies that we say that can bend the space continuum, right? So it's unlikely that we are going to have the same drives and impetus and plans as a civilization that operates on an almost godlike scale.
That brings up the disturbing possibility that we're just some kid's school project, because
it's what I was saying. A grad student is just like,
you're right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's going to get a C+ on Earth, and it's like, okay, I passed. Whatever.
Right.
Leave them to their own devices now.
And one concerning thing with that, of course, is what do you do if your project goes wrong? I mean, just
absolutely
reboot it or something, So when you're at possibly the mercies of civilizations like that, there is that kind of creepy element to it that not only are you really sort of outclassed in every sense, but they could reset that experiment. And you may be one of so many experiments as to be, rather than being special, as to be really, your project 7,603,000 and we'll just check on them once in a while, but there's better ones out there that are working out better. We kind of have to think like that. And one of the things I found really fascinating recently that came up, and this is a mind bender for people that don't necessarily follow the cutting edge of space science, right? What's going on there? Mm-hmm. There's a chap who I'm trying to think now, a leading thinker in the field, right? Who recently put out a paper an article saying that it's assumed that many of these civilizations, again with the assumption that they're out there, that if there's many of these advanced civilizations, that a lot of them, perhaps 90% or more, will be post-biological, and that they will have transitioned to either uploading themselves into silicon networks and existing as echoes of themselves in AI networks, or their technologies will outlive them, and that the biological forms have become extinct, but their robots and their AI crafts and all these things will go on, essentially, indefinitely, long after biology has vanished. Now, there's a lot of reasons why that's likely. I mean, obviously we can kind of infer it from ourselves, being the only life that we are well studied. We can see that in terms of intelligent life, we are already creating these machines that if we disappeared tomorrow, at least for some period, our robots or AI could go on for a while without us, that some of these machines could. Now, if we have something, if we were, say, 200 years time from now, what would we have? We probably would have kinds of either post-biological people to some degree and AI and stuff that we could run on without us, from solar power and all the rest doesn't really need us. So if that's true, if there's a lot of those out there, first of all, that it gives us a good chance that that's who we would meet first, rather than biological life, the machines, of some civilization. Secondly, if you could upload yourself, you can also potentially download yourself. And this is what this scientist was saying, that, could it be that they reach a point where they decide that post-biological existence actually isn't preferable to biological existence, and they decide to go the other way? Now, let's say that before you upload yourself, you set a reset point. Now, what would a reset point be like for a godlike civilization that's doing a project like this? It might be the seeding of a world that will produce a large number of biological containers for consciousness, that then if you wish to return to the physical biological world, that you can return to that planet and download yourself into the fetuses of that species.
Wouldn't it be easier for them to just, I don't know, make a farm, test people grown in test tubes? Then they can control the process a little bit, at least.
Well, I suppose
rather than seeding a planet.
Well, I suppose it's one way, isn't it? I mean, it depends on why, and again, what works better. I mean, if you have a huge lab, I mean, it becomes like a store planet in the end, isn't it? I mean, how do you get this whole thing to keep going happily along without you? I suppose you need the infrastructure, and what nature does really is provides the infrastructure to keep alive all of these beings, all these entities. Whereas if you have a lab, you kind of have to be hands-on with a lab, and you're the one running it, keeping it going, energy going into it, focusing on it. If you're focusing on some other project, you decide to experience being in the AI world, you could probably have some vast lab like that, but then possibly, and again, I'm just speculating, possibly they're working it out, they realize it's easier to have it as a planet. So if we have something like that, we could have a situation where such beings arrived here and say, they want to return to biology. I mean, that'd be a creepy kind of scenario where it's like, well, we turn up and we've grown you so that we can utilize you, as vessels. So who knows? Yeah. We could deal with.
It's like we're an organ farm, like a giant organ farm.
Yeah, don't like that.
No,
none of these theories are all of these theories absolutely terrifying.
They don't have to be, but I think it's that thing. I like to encourage people to expand beyond the simple ideas of aliens thinking like humans, that they want to come and get water, or they want to come get gold, or they want to take us over and be slaves, right? These are sort of what I consider simplistic human concerns about extraterrestrials, rather than higher level, if you're dealing with beings that can go to any planet they want, right? If they want land, resources, minerals, water, that stuff is abundant.
Right.
Totally
universe.
So,
I agree with you. I've always had a problem with the idea that we were some sort of slave class or something like that, created by a technology that should be able to create nanotech, that should be able to take apart a planet and turn it into robot helpers. It's like, this actually comes closer to me to the idea of why one would do this. And even down the lines of 2001: A Space Odyssey, of just spreading life for the sake of spreading life, because all of the universe is similar and that life is where interesting things happen, was kind of the implication of 2001.
Well, yeah, and also in that we see there that we don't really encounter the biological organisms. We encounter their machines, what appears to be a kind of silica block, which we can assume is something like an AI, silica network, like probe or whatever, what we call a Bracewell probe. Bracewell Sentinel probe is something you can leave on a planetary surface, which will monitor, record data, can give contact back to another planet, and potentially can be programmed to activate and make contact with a civilization once it reaches a certain level and interact. Now that that's a hypothetical object in space sciences. But what we see in 2001: A Space Odyssey is essentially a Bracewell probe. And so it's kind of funny because, again, the likelihood is that we would have at least initial encounters with the technologies of other civilizations rather than the biological organism. Again, to do the laws of probability. If there's 90% probably not post-biological systems, and if we assume all advanced civilizations use technology, because again, that's kind of what we're saying when we say advanced, that they have to be able to fly around in ships or bend space-time. So their machinery is far more likely to connect with us first in some sense, right? So I think 2001: A Space Odyssey does a good job of reflecting that the beings themselves may be so far beyond us as to simply employ their technologies for the most part to deal with other planets and other civilizations and stuff, right? And again, biology is not usually well suited to space travel. It could be that entities can put themselves into suspended animation, or that they may have lifespans that are just extraordinarily long, or that they're cybernetically enhanced and they live a long time. But we would usually assume biology is not well suited to vast periods in space. There's all these assumptions that all your beginning parts of your exploration of the galaxy would utilize probes, even if later on you transcend that with wormholes. You want to have these probes out there first, at some point in your civilization's development. So we should, in fact, have vast numbers of probes in the Milky Way. That's, again, another inferred understanding that if all civilizations out there reach a stage where they explore, that they all start with AI exploration and probes, those probes should be everywhere.